The first reason we struggle to draw realistic looking ground is because we forget about foreshortening. Now, foreshortening is that part of perspective theory that says that as something moves further away, it becomes narrower and narrower. So, although all these windows are the same size and the same distance apart, this one down here is narrower than this one up here, and the gaps get narrower as the wall moves further away, even though in real life these gaps are the same width. And if you're thinking, yes, but this is a wall, we're talking about the ground. The ground is just a wall lying on the ground. It's a wall tilted into a different direction, into a different plane. The effect of foreshortening happens, and it happens more and more extremely the greater the angle. And the ground is often at this sort of angle. Let's turn this bit of ground into something more recognizable to think about foreshortening. Let's pretend this bit of ground is a wall. Where's the halfway point in the wall? It's here. So this much grass here is this much grass here. All of this detail we're seeing, or rather not seeing very clearly, on this side of the line. But of course these are still large spaces. This amount of grass here is the same as here. It looks very different to here. Because this amount of grass is the same amount of grass as this, visually it's going to be a lot more compressed in this further half. And then this half up here, which is the same amount of distance as here, is going to be compressed even more. And this part way more compressed than this part. We cannot use the same marks, therefore, for this as we're going to use up here. We have to be aware of foreshortening and the way it affects the ground and what we see of it, and therefore how we're going to create that effect with whatever we're drawing with. In a moment, I'm going to draw this scene to put into practice a better way for all of these points. But just before I start that, let me demonstrate the second reason why we struggle to draw ground that looks realistic, which is we overdraw what we know, not what we see, which in this case is the grass. We both know what grass looks like, and we can see here in this closest grass how it is. It's something approximately like that. And so now we just keep looking at our drawing and seeing, well, there's grass here, 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 there's grass over here, and there's grass here, and there's a lot of grass up here. And we basically draw what we know about grass rather than what we're seeing here, the way we're seeing it here, with the angle and the color and the lighting and the distance, all of those things. We've stopped observing our reference and we're drawing from a different memory of this subject. The effect of this is firstly to create a bit of a cartoony impact visually with what we're seeing. And also, rather than looking as if this is stretching into the distance, all of this grass looks more like it's stacked one on top of the other. It's not creating the realistic appearance of our photo because we're not actually following what we see in the photo. We've switched off thinking, oh, I've got this. Careful observation to see the things we need to see to draw is the crucial, critical first part of any drawing. While I explain the three other reasons why I think you struggle to draw ground that looks realistic, I'll let you watch me draw this scene that we've looked at already, slightly cropped, because it will also demonstrate now what I've said and what I'm saying. So this third point is the problem is that our scale ends up being all out of kilter. The relative size of one object to another. And with the ground, this is something I particularly see happening. And it is because of this foreshortening issue. The fact that the distances become so very compressed as they move away from us, we don't reduce the size of our marks, the size of our objects as we go back adequately. We draw them as if they're much closer than they really are. But often then we're drawing other aspects of the scene. Now there really aren't any here, but there might be, say, a row of pot plants that are in a line moving back, and we draw them at the right scale. We reduce them in size adequately because they're larger and it's more obvious, but we don't do it with the same consistency with the grass. And that creates this disjointedness that starts to make it look not real. So we need to keep the relative size of everything together. And here, that includes things such as these dead leaves on the ground. They become not just smaller, but we actually start to see them at a different angle as they move back. At the front of the picture, we're more looking down on them, and so we're more likely to see their overall shape. As they move back in the plane, we're looking at them more edge on, side on. So we see them a lot less, and what we do see is a lot thinner. These are the details we need to pay attention to. You'll notice I'm drawing at this point with a 0.2 millimeter Unipin black fine liner. The fourth point, why our grass doesn't look realistic, is because we don't take into account the effect of distance. That when we see things in the distance, we don't usually just see smaller, more compressed versions of what would be closer. We have that point I just made about the grass, that in fact we're seeing it more edge on, so we're not going to see as much height. But simply because it is very small, because the blades of grass are small, and because the distance is great, we just don't see the detail further away, and we try to draw too much of that detail at the wrong scale, and we don't get the effect of distance. But there are other things that we need to do as well as reducing the detail, and as well as drawing for the change in angle that we're seeing something from. And that's to use lighter marks as we go further back. Now, I pointed out this is a 0.2 millimeter pen. You'll see me switch it to a 0.1 millimeter pen, and also then to a 0.03 millimeter pen in the completion of this drawing, because as we go further back in the plane, in the ground level plane, I find that by switching to a lighter pen lets me create lighter marks, and also it makes it a bit easier to put the amount of detail I might want to put in without it looking too black and inky, which also makes it feel like it's closer than it is. And in that way mimic the effect of life, mimic the effect that we're seeing in this photo. So let me just make a few points before I get to the last point that are just more connected with this particular drawing and my process here. Notice I'm paying really attention. I'm not just doing grass from the front to the back. I'm plotting this as if it were anything. I'm looking at where, if you like, more emphasized blocks of grass are on my reference, and I'm trying to work out where is that going to be in my drawing, and then I'm using dots because I know they won't be a problem at the end to establish where those parts of the drawing are so that I can make sure I preserve the paper. Look what I've done here though now. I've switched from primarily using vertical lines to horizontal lines because I have to stop drawing blades of grass. And when I look at this scene, there are two things I can draw. There's the grass, or there's the sort of the dirt with the leaf litter and sticks and little stones and things on it. And just because I've started, I'm switching pens now, just because I've started drawing the grass doesn't mean that as I go further back, I'm not better suited to switch to drawing the dirt. And I'm drawing the dirt with predominantly horizontal lines. And you can see how that makes them stand out quite clearly from the vertical lines for the grass. And I think this is a really important thing to remember. And look what I'm doing here now. I'm putting dots. I'm not drawing vertical lines at all. Because when we're this far back, the individual blades of grass have no vertical aspect. They have no height compared to the ones in front. And so any sort of vertical mark is not going to represent what's happening. And then we come closer. Now remember that first point and that diagram with the boxes drawn and the diagonals drawn on the ground. Once we go even a little way back in the ground plane, we see a lot less detail. The transition from seeing the whole blades of grass and the whole tufts of grass quite clearly that we have in the front, that really disappears very rapidly as we move, if you like, vertically in our drawing. Though vertically in our drawing, of course, is moving horizontally in reality. And you'll see I'm using lots of horizontal marks to represent that leaf litter and dirt and mulch that's on the ground. So now I'm going to put this tree in. I'm using the 0.1 millimeter pen here. This is a Sydney, one of Sydney's Moreton Bay figs. These massive trees are on the coast, all up and down the New South Wales coast and right up into the tropics of Queensland. So overall, I need to keep this tree looking a bit light because it is far back. It's so far away that the grass in the front is a much clearer visual reality for this scene. So I need to keep this tree feeling further back. But until I draw it, I can't actually work out how dark to make the marks that I'm making for the further back ground. And now I've got some other details that aren't so much connected with the ground. And I must admit, when I started this, I really wasn't going to fuss with the background. And then I thought, well, look, it's a bit of an unusual drawing, if it's going to be a drawing as such, but let's just see how it looks. Sometimes trying to make something that we wouldn't have thought was a drawing look interesting enough to stand alone as a drawing is an interesting challenge to do. So now with these plants, these sort of very tropical looking broad-leafed plants in the midground, is really I'm just drawing them by negative space. I'm trying not to draw individual leaves, even though they're quite large. I'm trying to create the silhouette edges that we see. I'm trying to create the bands of value where we go from darker to lighter to darker to lighter again, and a sense of distance, a sense of keeping them in the right place in the plane. So there's that street pole there. This is one of the edges of the Sydney Domain, which is a very large, open, grassy area with lovely undulations reflecting the original ground. And on the right-hand side of this footpath, there's a road, and then there's the Art Gallery of New South Wales. So, like many Sydney-siders, I know this particular spot very well. So rapidly simplifying what I'm drawing as we move further back, and I'm really simply trying to create values of light and dark here, and marks that somehow do suggest foliage. But I also want to draw it in a way that it really stands out quite differently from what's in the front. And now we come to the fifth reason, and this one is really, really important. And please, if you're finding both these points and this demo interesting, please hit that like button for me. I'd love to hear a comment of how you've felt about drawing the ground, and have any of these 5 points particularly helped you in feeling that you're going to be better equipped to have more effective looking ground in your drawing. But the fifth point is, I think, really the key to all the others, and that's that we simply don't want to be bothered, and that for some reason we don't think it's going to be very important. You see, the ground is not usually what we're drawing. It's unusual in this scene that it is, and I'd really recommend you have a go drawing this. I'll post this reference photo, of course, on my channel post page and in the community section, so you can have a go, because the point is, so often the ground is an afterthought. We're really drawing the things on the ground or around the ground, and we just don't want to put the effort into it. It's hard to believe it's that important. But of course, in any drawing, every mark we put on the paper is so important for the overall effect. A singer may only hit 4 or 5 wrong notes out of hundreds and hundreds of notes, but it will spoil the overall effect of the song. And it's the same with our drawing. It may be a small part, but if we're not as careful and as intentional with every part of our scene, then we're going to end up with parts that really pull back, detract from the overall. I need to see every part as important as every other part. My support acts, as I call areas such as the ground, need to still be as strong and as skilled as the stars. So, what do you think? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I had a lot of fun drawing this, as I often do with unusual subjects, and I hope you have a go. But however it goes, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.